So this past Thursday during the Shantideva teachings, Venerable Children reminded us that it's not enough to just recognize the dukkha of dukkha, gross suffering. And she really emphasized how important it is for us to learn to recognize the dukkha of change, because so often we mistake that for pleasure, and also to recognize the dukkha of pervasive conditioning, just having this body and mind under the control of afflictions and karma that it's like we don't know any other way to be, right? Why is this a problem? And the trouble with not recognizing the dukkha of change and the dukkha of pervasive conditioning is that then we just keep getting hooked by what we think is pleasure or what we think will bring everlasting happiness, and then we just keep getting reborn again and again and again in cyclic existence, propelled by our ignorance, afflictions, and karma. It reminded me of this analogy I read recently about how all of us are like silkworms spinning ourselves in our own spit, wrapping ourselves up like that. It's quite scary. And when Venerable was teaching too, I thought about Venerable Chini's talk that she gave last week, right, about going to hell. But not the going to hell part. During her talk, she mentioned how she doesn't often meditate on the sufferings of the celestial realm beings. And when she said that, I kind of smiled to myself, because when I've tried to meditate on the sufferings of celestial beings, I've seen a lot of resistance in my mind. And when I look at that, I think at some level, I think I'm jealous of these celestial beings. It's like they have super long lives, they live in palaces, whatever they want to wear appears magically, whatever they want to eat just appears. They're gorgeous, they're surrounded by gorgeous beings, only beings they find pleasant. I'm like, why are you an object of my compassion? Like, you should be giving me some of that, right? There's definitely that in my mind. And then, of course, it says that their happiness doesn't last forever. This state goes on for a long time, and then at some point the karma runs out, and then their beautiful bodies start to lose their luster, they start to smell, their friends disappear, and then they get to see that after eons and eons of bliss, they're going to fall into a lower realm, or they're going to suffer for eons and eons, and completely lose whatever they thought they had, and not have the ability to get it back. And it's said that that kind of mental torture is just huge and incredibly painful. So I've been trying to think of some personal examples to try and relate to that. And one of them that popped up in my mind was a memory that came from when I was in freshman year at college, and I went to acting school in New York in the summer. I think acting school in New York is probably a good resource for celestial being type sufferings. So, I was paired up with a fellow rising sophomore, and we were supposed to work on a scene together. And we had an hour in the studio to rehearse. And it's very difficult to get studio space. In Manhattan, it's really, it's crowded, there are a lot of students, but the school kindly assigned us each an hour. So I had learned my lines, I had worked the character, I was ready to go, like show up, we're gonna work an hour and we're gonna get out. So I arrive. My scene partner is already there, which is a good thing, but she's on the phone. And she's in tears, huge tears, bawling, howling, like yelling on the phone. And it's really awkward and uncomfortable. It's just two of us in this studio. And there wasn't anywhere else to go. The public corridor is really tiny. And I wanted to work my lines, right? So I just sat there and I went over my lines as she yelled and wailed and screamed on the phone. And after about 15 to 20 minutes, finally she got off the phone. And then I just, being very task-focused, I said, do you want to rehearse? I mean, we don't have much time. And of course she says, no, I'm kind of out of it. So I say, okay, do you want to talk? And then she says, yeah. So I say, okay, what's going on? And she said, my mother is buying new hubcaps for my sister's car, but she won't give me $600 to do my hair. And so I just kind of sat there like, okay. I was too stunned to respond. So I just let her continue talking. And at some point, what helped me to empathize with my scene partner when she started talking about how much she wanted a boyfriend. She's never had a real boyfriend, and freshman year has passed. She wanted so much to meet someone, but she hasn't met anyone yet. And at that moment, I thought, oh, okay, that's what this hair thing is about. Like, I understand. I've also wanted a boyfriend before. I know how it feels. You just want to be loved, right? You just want to be happy and not suffer. And how sad it is to think that spending $600 on dead cells on your head is going to help. It's incredibly sad. So at that moment, that helped kind of calm my mind and see like, okay, she just wants to be happy and not suffer. And I think in some ways that is a kind of celestial realm suffering, right? Where her whole life, she's gotten whatever she wants when she wants it. And then now you're an adult. Mom's not going to give you everything at the drop of a hat. Maybe no one wants to love you this year. No one's falling in love with you right now. What are you going to do about it? Yeah. And it just completely freaks you out, right? This is not fair. This is not how the world is supposed to be. You rage, you scream at the sheer injustice of it all. Because the only thing you have focused on is your own pleasure. That's all you know. And the moment it's gone, you can't think of anything else. You can't even see that there's someone else in the room who has, maybe other ideas and priorities. All you can see is your own pain, and it's driving you berserk. Yeah. It's very terrifying, actually, when I think of my own mind in those states. Yeah, all you can see is your own suffering. And so Venerable told us too to think about this not just on the interpersonal level, but to look at it on the macro level. So I've been thinking too about Mr. Trump and Mr. Putin, who I think are very much celestial beings in some way. They also have this kind of celestial realm suffering. Right? When I think of them, I think they've had a lot of wealth and power for a good chunk of their lives. They live in palaces. I'm guessing whatever they want to wear appears when they want it. I read that I think on Trump's tax return, apparently he spent $70,000 on his hair. Hairstylists are all discussing, really? It doesn't look like it costs that much. So who knows? But that's what it says. I'm guessing whatever they want to eat is made just the way they like it. If not, you're fired. And of course, they have people at their beck and call. You're surrounded only by people who tell you what you want to hear. And, there are beautiful women all around them. And that's the world they live in, right? But they're still not happy. And if they don't get what they want when they want it, then somebody's got to pay, right? Doesn't matter who's in the room, who's sharing the planet. I want what I want now. So, yeah, it's a very, very painful mind to have. And as I spend time with them in session, I don't know if you're sitting with them too, I think what it comes down to, I've just been thinking a lot about what is the source of all this pain? I think they actually just have a lot of difficulty coming to terms with aging. That is my theory. That's the celestial realm suffering, right? You've had this amazing wealth and fortune or whatever it is for a really long time, and as you watch it slip away, your mind just goes berserk. Yeah, so you want to make America great again. It's like, what? Or you're going to liberate the fatherland or its possessions from the Nazis. It's like, what? You basically are trying to go back to when you were 20, I guess, and the world was your oyster, right? But it's not. You're not the richest, most powerful, good-looking, intelligent person in the room. Maybe you never were, yeah? But, that's what's slipping out of your fingers. There's a new generation. Things change. People have new ideas. And yes, you are left behind. So aging sucks. It's painful. It made me think of how once Venerable Children and I were in Dharamsala, and this topic of aging came up during the trip. And she was asking one of her teachers, is there a way to age gracefully? And he kind of looked at us and said, you don't age gracefully. He said, aging is dukkha. I was like, oh, okay. Whoa, all right. But I do think there are ways to age with a happy mind. I think that's the point of the question, yeah. So, when we do the meditations on love, we try and wish for others to have, mundane happiness all the way up to the highest happiness, yeah. So I've been just really thinking about, what can I wish for Mr. Trump and Mr. Putin? And it just struck me, I just wish Mr. Trump, like any other retiree, might take up like a good hobby. Maybe like competitive ballroom dancing. Yeah, that's what I wish for him. No, imagine if him and Melania went for competitive ballroom dancing classes. It's dramatic, it's exciting. You have to spend a lot of time on the costumes and the hair and the theme. You have to practice a lot. You get to, you have fans still, right? You can have intrigues against the other team, but it's all in good fun. And maybe it will revive the spark in their marriage. Yeah? So I think that's a lot better than staging insurrections, no? So that's kind of what I started to wish for him. Just something happy, just the mundane kind of happiness that ordinary people enjoy, which he doesn't really seem to have. And then for Mr. Putin, I thought, what if, I wish for him to join a socialist sing-along group. Yeah. They exist. Yeah, do not laugh. My parents, who are happily retired, attend one from year to year. They were both raised, they went to Chinese schools in Singapore, and at the time in the 60s, it was very heavily influenced by communist China. This was before the Cultural Revolution. So both my parents grew up with these like socialist ideals. Yeah, they wanted to, stand up for the underdog, go and demonstrate for workers to have equal wages. Yeah, when we talk about that time in history, like the spark comes back in their eyes, yeah. And so, after the Cultural Revolution and all that, then they were completely heartbroken, and it was a very difficult time when those ideals got dashed. But till today, every year in Singapore, there's some kind of like sing-along group. I don't think they bill themselves as a socialist sing-along, but basically it's all the people who went to these Chinese schools. They get together and they sing the songs from their time. They're not popular songs at all. They're about like the ocean and the fatherland or whatever it is that they sing, But it represents these like communal values and ideals that they had. They're so happy going to this sing-along group. They sing, and then they come home and get on with their lives. Yeah, so, if you miss the fatherland and everything it stood for, maybe you just join a socialist choir. Yeah, don't invade other people's countries or try and start a nuclear war. I don't know. That might actually be a lot easier. So that's where my practice is. I'm trying to find creative ways to connect with and love people who are in the same room, in the same planet, who are sometimes screaming, crying, raging about things that I personally don't think are very important. And that's my value judgment. But, it matters the world to them, and it's painful. And to think deeply about, how to actually bring about happiness and freedom from suffering for all beings. As Venerable Lamsal said some weeks ago, that's a very tall order, but we can try.